Hey, everybody, I'm Rick Coluccio, and you're listening to the Recruiting EQ podcast. This is a conversation show which advocates for the use of emotional intelligence and the emotional quotient in recruitment, in sales, in the workplace, in go to market strategies, and in all kinds of different ways, especially in the face of all the AI tools that we find ourselves being surrounded by on a day to day basis. Today's episode is episode number 107. And we have called it When AI Reaches Its Limits with our special guest, Samuel Morhaim. Samuel, how are you?
Good. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure. Do people call you Samuel or Sam, by the way? I never asked you this.
Sam is fine.
Yeah? Cool. People call me Rick too, but my name's Ricardo. So there you go. I should.
Oh, well. Yeah. I joke that I can't even pronounce my own name in English. Some people call me Samuel. So Sam is fine for for everyday activities.
Perfect. Then we'll stick to Sam so that I don't butcher trying to say it with a Spanish accent either.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for joining us on the show. You and I had a really cool conversation, which I revisited and took some notes from that I'd like to bring up. And we could just as well have called this episode When AI Reaches Its Limits in compliance or in screening there's a whole bunch of different ways that we outlined in our initial call about, ways that maybe people aren't even thinking about AI's limitations, diving into all these new tools. I'm excited to get into it, but before we do, if you can do me a favor and just sort of explain to our listeners a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Sure. So I go into businesses, typically startups, or work directly with founders and help them put together solutions. And so a couple of years ago, that solution meant software development, MVPs, all sort of solutions to bring together an idea and bring it to life. In the last 3 years, it has changed dramatically, of course, with AI commoditizing the software development. So now what I do is I bring in all those skills and the expertise of working in both sides of the equation, both as a founder and as an engineer, and help put together all those technologies to help either the business grow, see more patients if you're in healthcare, optimize your ROI, your workflow. So ultimately, just using AI as a transformational force.
And that's interesting because, again, this is sort of the duality. We were talking about this just off mic too, the sort of yin yang relationship that we have with all things, but with AI in particular. I never want to come off these episodes where we're talking about limitations or concerns, or whatever else, of saying like, don't use AI, it's evil. This is more from a perspective of it's inevitable. You have to use AI. You should be using AI, but be careful of these pitfalls. And like you're saying, your whole business model revolves around using AI to optimize things. But there are also some interesting cautionary experiences that you've had that maybe people should be aware of.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's those, as you just said, those two ends of the spectrum. In one is AI is here, and yes, it's not perfect, and it's probably the worst it's been, the worst it's going to be. Now it's going to get much better incrementally and exponentially in the next few days, weeks, and months, and so we're going to see even more transformations. But it's not to be scared of. It's not to replace all humans. It's to augment our abilities and our skills to serve the business, serve our clients, serve our team members. So that's the reality, and it's a beautiful reality. We're able to do 10 times, 20, 100 times more than we could have ever imagined 3 or 4 years ago, or even 6 months ago. On the other side is the fact that it still makes mistakes, and it's going to keep making mistakes because humans programmed it, and we are not perfect. And in that area, especially when talking in healthcare or even in recruiting, the AIs are making decisions for us. A lot of these use case or case studies are surfacing where if you're denied employment because an AI flagged you as risk, then you're in a blacklist for a year. I forgot the study, but I can send it later to you. So these things are happening, and in healthcare as well. So we need to be very careful about not just HIPAA. I mean, HIPAA is just the floor, but there's all these other complexities: clinical accuracy, safety, inclusion. So there's all these bad things, but we can't have them without. You can have the good without the bad.
Absolutely. And yeah, for my Canadian audience who may be listening to this, most of them are US, but HIPAA compliance is like a, medical industry compliance in the US. Um, that's the thing that, so I noted down that your current business model, which is a pivot from what you were specializing in before, but your current business model is threefold, right? Security audits and compliance, product development and scaling, and then the third was fractional CTO consulting. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. I keep playing on how to package that to better serve my clients, but that's pretty much at the core of everything is bringing my expertise and the expertise of my teams to help companies develop this either products or transformations. So, we go to a clinic, they have 10 different systems, and we help them put them together. Or we go to a startup that they want to help patients get better access, and they have this idea on their mind. Sure, they can vibe code it, but is it going to be HIPAA compliance? Is it going to be ready for patients? And so we help them either take that vibe code, harden it, and make it production ready, or we help them develop it. And on the other completely side of the business is basically just as an independent fractional CTO or one of my team members to go into the business and advise them on how the best use of AI and not just AI, but technology as a transformational force.
Yeah, awesome. And yeah, and since this show is called Recruiting EQ, I would love to start with an anecdote that you told me about the candidate screening process and AI. Mind you, these days I feel like the show could be called How to Live with AI in the Workplace, but
Yeah.
that's just the hot topic of the year. But you and I talked about an instance where you were using an AI screening tool. And can you maybe tell that anecdote again for our listeners so we can discuss that a little bit?
Yeah, of course. So 3 years before the last 3 years, we were interviewing probably maybe 20, 30 candidates per month for different engineering roles. And we had an automated test system. We look at two things. We need to make sure that there is a cultural fit, that the person can communicate with the clients and can understand the ideas. But of course, they need to have a minimum engineering knowledge, right? We need to know that they can actually code. And we rely heavily on those tests. And about 2 years ago, we started noticing that everybody was acing the automated tests. And when 80, 90, 100% results, and I would interview them, and 5 minutes into the call, it was like he doesn't really know enough. I mean, there's basic concepts that he doesn't have. I don't know how he passed the test. And of course, this is the time where AI chatbots and everything was coming up, and basically they were cheating on the test. I don't blame any engineer today using AI, but the interview or the focus had to shift, and that's the most important part. We had to completely throw out the window that test and go for a different approach, knowing if that person had what I describe as taste. When you even a monkey can code today, but having taste and knowing what to code, how to code it, tell Claude to do whatever you want, but you need to know exactly, you need to know what's going to be a meaningful product addition and what is just going to be some AI slop. And that completely changed the game for us in recruiting.
And that's fascinating, right? And I feel like the conversation about using AI tools often happens not in a vacuum exactly, but I feel like it's like a one-way discussion where like, what tools can we use to be more efficient in what we're doing? So it's very we centric often, let's say from a company perspective, you know what I mean? Like, oh, how can we automate things? How can we screen candidates better? Yada, yada, yada. But the more of those tools you implement where human beings are not involved, the more risk you have of, on the flip side, candidates are also able to use AI. It's very inexpensive to get very powerful AI tools nowadays.
Yeah.
And they can use those AI tools to quote unquote hack what you're doing. Maybe not right away, but whatever guardrail you put over it, how long is it going to be effective before someone finds the answers, a hack, whatever, the information gets transmitted to AI or gets out there on the internet somewhere of, oh yeah, just do this, put this prompt into Claude and then you'll get the answers to whatever. And that's going to keep happening, one would imagine, probably with quicker cycles as this evolves, no?
It is. And that's why the approach needs to change. because I see some job postings and they're asking for skills. You need to know React and you need to know this. I'm like, for the last 2 years, we were an open source type of software development shop, React and JavaScript and all these technologies. In the last 2 years, I haven't given a second thought about the framework or the language that I was going to write, because the AI can do it for us. It's going to choose the best language for the task. So don't get me wrong, we're choosing them strategically. But it's no longer a question for the candidate. Do you know how to write in Rust or C++? The question is, can you direct the AI to write what we need? And are we going to be able to work together? Are you going to be able to express your idea for a new feature in a way that it's going to be compelling for the client or for the users, rather than, okay, yes, you can write it in JavaScript. What difference does that make, right? It's more about the end goal. And circling back to what you said about AI and automation, yeah, you can automate everything, but the question, what is the end goal? Is the end goal to just get rid of X amount of employees so that your phones get answered automatically? Or is the goal to provide better service so that when somebody calls for a medication refill, either the right chatbot or the right voice assistant takes care of it? And if not, there's a human that can take action with the patients that need it or the users that need it. And I think that's a big distinction.
See, I love where you're going with this, because I would say that myself, pardon me, in recruitment professionals, most of whom are sales focused, go-to-market focused, or are leaders in sales and go-to-market, or they're like founders who do founder-led sales. A lot of this is sales driven. So it's difficult to assess, like, are you good at sales or not on a resume or whatever, right? But there's certain indicators, and the idea of skills often is on paper skills, not necessarily skills in context. But I like that the necessity of what you're describing with AI sort of rendering some very skills-based testing, where it was like, we don't need context, we just know if you can do this, and that's it. The logic from the recruitment standpoint is, let's screen you out based on, do you have this in a vacuum, do you have this skill, yes or no? And it's always been considered a yes or no question. But now that's not the case anymore. Here we still need to, like you're saying, assess taste, which I think it's an apt term, but like, in other words, how are you, the individual, able to connect the dots in these intangible ways to be able to make decisions in context and so on? That's kind of, we're into soft skills. We're more or less into EQ at that point, even for a very technical aptitude test, or what was considered a technical aptitude test before. How do you feel about that? Do you feel like that thinking is starting to show itself in clients of yours, that they're like, we need to consider more of a whole package here, we can't just look at skills in abstraction any longer?
Absolutely. And I think those skills and expertise, yeah, basically are now commodities. Those, when you package them, they become valuable, right? So it is like going back in the day and saying, you know, Word and you know Excel. That's not a product. It's not an offer. That's just, it's a skill. Once it became a commodity, you need to package it in a different way. I know how to use all these tools to provide a result for the business. So yes, ultimately that intelligence to be able to choose the skills and augment yourself. So in sales, right? So you can be you don't have to be the best salesperson, but if you know how to use all these tools in the right way, you can augment your abilities. You cannot customize 1,000 different emails by hand, but you can definitely get all these tools to give you the information that you need in order to craft the message that is going to be customizable and very appropriate for each of your leads. Before it would take days to be able to do this, now you can do it in a couple of hours. So that ultimately is having that taste to be able to choose the skills that you need at that time, put them into practice. And yeah, ultimately, I think the hardest part of all of this is all of these are very intangible, right? So they're hard to assess.
Exactly.
I haven't figured out a way to do it other than just having a conversation face to face, or through a web meeting, and getting a sense of what this individual, what are their expertise, how they approach a problem, how they think through things. And there's I don't think AIs will get better, will understand maybe tone and inflection, and will understand even your facial expressions to know if you know what you're saying. But ultimately, I think that human factor, that EQ, it's going to be very hard to codify and put into a system that does it for you.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think that there's I part of the mission statement of this podcast is almost to have these discussions with people like yourself to see about what you're seeing and kind of be at the forefront of this conversation of like what are some of the qualities or elements that we think collectively or that you think and specifically Sam, you know, are going to go up in value as far as what a person is bringing to the table in terms of hiring, in terms of what hiring managers are going to look for out of someone who codes or is in sales or whatever. And I love that you brought the word taste to the table with regard to code. I think that that's something that 10 years ago people would have laughed at us if we would have said an aptitude test needs to account for taste in coding. People would have been like, what planet are you from? Like, are they going to like the Saatchi gallery? Like, are they doing this at the Met Gala? Why does it, who cares about taste, right? Are they a fashion designer? But frankly, I think that the AI conversation is an interesting opportunity for us to look at this and go like, actually, maybe we've been missing out a little bit at some of the big picture and some of the more human qualities. What do you, aside from taste, taste is a combination of things, but what else do you feel like? Obviously, things like creativity and empathy and so on are things that AI is not capable of. How do you feel about like human qualities and what do you picture in the near future or far future will go up in value in a job interview?
Yeah. So I value a lot, and this is probably my own reflection, but I value a lot resourcefulness and creativity, but not just about creating ideas and all these things. I like to say this when I was managing a larger team and we were hiring a lot of people. I would sometimes hire people that didn't have the skills that we needed, but they had something more important, which was the ability to learn them. And I kept saying to people, I'd rather hire somebody that can learn rather than somebody that's the best in one area or whatever number of areas, but they're fixed, basically, probably the fixed mentality versus dynamic mentality or growth mentality. And I think those two things together play really well. And that's something that I look for in people, even in clients. I want to make sure that they're not just stuck with what, they have a spec document and they need to turn it into a production. They go beyond that, and they have they have that creativity, can get outside of the box and say, this is what we wrote 2 weeks ago, but it's no longer true, and we can adapt, or we just don't have the answers. Let's iterate. So those soft skills, in a way, are far more important, are, in my opinion, really hard to assess. Are those things that you can only grasp when you met somebody probably for a few, and you work with them for a few times, and you realize, okay, this individual has the ability to learn. You can just give like AI 3 years ago. You have to be very specific with the prompt, and it's the same thing with somebody that has a fixed mentality, right? You need to be very specific, otherwise they'll hallucinate and deviate. And on the other side, you want somebody that you just give them, this is what I need. I need the business to sell more. And they can go up and elaborate, get information, gather data, find tools, and apply them. That it's hard to assess, but I think that once you meet somebody a couple of times, you realize, okay, this person has it, they don't have it. It's really hard to point your finger at it, but it's one of those soft skills that I think are the most valuable in the next few years. There's nothing that the AI is going to be able to replace that.
Yeah, that makes total sense to me, and I appreciate that. I feel like there are candidates seem to have, in go-to-market roles anyway, sales roles, recruiting roles, like I am focused on mostly.
Yeah,
they seem to have kind of a evaluation fatigue. Like they question, why am I doing this test? What is can't they just interview me and give me a job basically based on what I've done before, right? I think there's a bit of a cynicism that there's too many steps. There's been too many steps for a long time. Some of them feel disorganized. Some of them feel sloppy. Some people worry, particularly in the marketing and design space, that if they're being given an assignment or asked to give a presentation or even a sales person and ask them to research a sales go-to-market strategy, that they feel like if they don't get the job, that they've been taken advantage of, that their company has asked them to do free labor for them. So there are some people even in lower level jobs are just kind of like, I refuse to do an assignment unless you pay me for it. And I'm like, well, dude, you know, this is not a very senior job. That's not going to happen. And I understand it, because I feel like there's a fatigue from too many evaluations, and a lot of people have not seen even a job offer at the end of all these evaluations. How do you feel about that? Do you feel, because a lot of these intangibles, I feel like you have to do stuff like that in order to assess them, to assess people. Are you seeing the same thing, that there's a bit of this fatigue or this cynicism, or how have you seen that evolve on your end?
I think it's more maybe going to the different generations, where, you know, sometimes we see the memes and we read the stories, but I think that maybe the younger generation, it's not used to having to knock on doors and having to send 100 resumes to be said no 100 times. And I think maybe that has something to do with it. On the other side, I do know that, you know the stories. You go to Google and you need to spend a few weeks on the interview process, and you know, there's 1,000 applicants for the same job. So I think both, you know, that's an extreme that shouldn't be happening. In the companies that I've managed and the ones that I've worked, for the most part, the longest interview has been three steps, basically. Maybe like one automated test before, and two interviews. In the cases where we have to ask for a project or some research, we've done it a paid assignment. So,
Okay.
of course, you cannot do that for 100 candidates, but
No.
when you screen the first 100 and you get to your finalists 2 or 3, I think it's just good business practice. Just, you know, pay them. And I've done this for SDRs. I've done this for engineers and creatives, where I say, listen, I don't know if you're going to be able to do what I want. Find these 50 leads. I'm going to pay you X amount for the next 2 weeks. And you can compare. You get those 2 or 3, finalists. It's going to cost you a little bit more. But what is it going to cost you more? To hire the wrong person, find out 3 months later, then hire again, rather than, you know, do a paid experiment, spend a couple $1,000s, figure it out, and then do the, you know, get a bit more informed candidate into your company. And I think that beats everything else.
I agree with you. I think that it is good business practice, and I actually hope that it becomes a little bit more popular, for especially if it's like a more robust project, right? If it's something that you can crank out really easily. And here's another thing that happens: if you don't pay someone for their assignment, guess where they're doing it? AI, baby. That's where they're doing it in Claude or in ChatGPT in 4 minutes, and they're going to hand it to you and go, "Here you go. Here's your assignment."
Well, but that I say something. A couple of years ago, I sent a note to my wife, and she's like, "Did ChatGPT write this?" And I'm like, "Well, everything that ChatGPT writes, I wrote it, and everything that I write, ChatGPT writes as well. So there's nothing that I'm producing today that doesn't go through some sort of AI. Even when I'm replying to WhatsApp messages, I'm dictating them, just because, you know, it's just faster, and it adjusts a little bit the tone and everything. When I do it, I have an extension that does it. So you're right. If you're maybe a junior intermediate candidate and you're applying to 100 jobs and they're asking you to do X or Y, why are you the best candidate for this role? It's a ChatGPT prompt. They're not going to write their answers. ChatGPT knows more about my life than my therapist. So it's going to do a good job. But as you said, you know, if they ask me to do a research on a market, ChatGPT is going to do it, unless and that's a key differentiator when we were interviewing people. Before we were sending the automated test, and then having the at least a 5-minute interview to know if they could talk to the senior team, we switched that around, and I think that's very important. That 5-minute conversation gave a sense of, I don't want to say belonging, but it gave a sense of humanity to the position. You're not just another candidate, and we're not asking you to spend 3 hours doing the test blindly without seeing you. We were having a 5-minute conversation. Or head of or director of operations was doing those calls. Hey, I'm the director of operations. I want to talk to you and get to know you for 5 minutes. And if they pass that initial interview, then they go to what they used to go to the technical automated, and they would spend the time. Otherwise, if we just ask them, hey, you do 3 hours of work for free, it's basically a 3 hour test. 80% we're basically bailing. So maybe giving that sense of humanity and connection goes a far goes a far way, goes a long way.
It's amazing though, right? It's like it's both sad and interesting that we have to have these conversations all the times of saying like, you know what, a little bit of humanity goes a long way. But I agree with you. I think that there's lots of points in the job market, whether it's during an interview process when you're screening candidates, whether it's when you're interviewing for jobs, whether it's after you're hired, in the way that you do your job. There's so many points at which we've not really thought about the human element for a long time. And now we have to again. And it's just clear that it's like, oh yeah, it's true. Maybe human connection is important at every stage, right? Like it's
Yeah.
funny, but it's true that we have to remind ourselves of that.
Yeah. A couple of weeks ago, probably you know this, but so LinkedIn has an AI screener. It's
Yes.
a video AI screener. So for people that don't know this, when you post a job, your candidates, you can send them to a video AI screener. And I don't hire it that much or that many people in the last few weeks, but I needed. We were hiring an SDR position, and I turn it on, and I start looking at the interview. Basically, it's a video, and the AI starts talking to the candidate, and it's like, explain your experience with this, or tell us why you're the best candidate. And I could see the people. I saw the first five, and it was hurting inside. I'm
Oh
like,
no.
I wouldn't be able to stand in front of the camera, talk to the AI, and being able to and being asked these questions, and they did it. And some of great question, great answers, and I end up interviewing a few of them, and we hire actually one of those. But I turn it off. Like I didn't feel good doing it,
Mm.
sending it to them, and I wouldn't feel good having an interview like that. I just wouldn't do it. And maybe a lot of people are using that today, but it's painful.
Yeah, like I am of the mind that I don't think, I think that any time two human beings are interacting, some form of relationship is happening. And I think that when some form of relationship happens between two humans, something new is created, right? I mean, you know design. I don't know if this here. Someone told me this a while ago. This design principle of 2 + 2, 1 + 1 = 3, which is a graphic design principle, or like a visual design principle, not only in graphics, but where it's like if you have two lines, one on top of each other, but there's a bit of a space between the two, like two humans, you actually have three lines, right? You have two colored lines and then one clear blank line in the middle. So
Yeah,
1 + 1 = 3, and the third one is the relationship between those two people. I don't think that happens when it's a person with an AI. It's
yeah,
it's like being in a vacuum, and it's unnatural, and it feels weird to evaluate people when they're in that scenario.
yeah. It is. But it is a challenge, because if you're a hyper growth company, if you're Anthropic and you're hiring 1,000 people for a job, then you want to find ways to automate and speed up. But I feel that we need to be very careful and very very strategic about that. So I think in our case, we switch it around. Instead of sending everybody through the mid grinder and just getting the few brave ones that finish the test, maybe small changes like that go a long way. And we have to be strategic. It cannot. There's going to be a point where there's going to be some sort of AI fatigue, where it probably happens to all of us. We call T-Mobile to get something done, and we have to go through all the menus, and we like desperately type in Siri. I know I can get the answer, but I don't want to have to interact with the AI, or the answering system. I just want to talk to somebody. And then there are very useful cases where I don't want to talk to anybody. I know
Yeah.
exactly what I want to say, and I just want the answer. So we have to be strategic about how we approach that and how we apply it.
Yeah, totally agreed. Totally agreed. There's a couple of things that you brought up in our last conversation that I'd like to touch on as well. So you talked a little bit about the democratization of code and coding, and how basically Claude has been able to enable everybody, and every company can sort of do their own coding now, and all this kind of stuff, and how that you have come to terms with that. You've accepted it. You've moved on to change your value proposition, and you had a few interesting things that we went back and forth about. What does it mean to change your value proposition when a lot of the things that used to be, you said coders used to be sort of the gatekeepers of creating software, and I think to a large extent that applies to different things, right? Where now there's an even playing field where everybody has access to the same tools. Can you elaborate a little bit on that and how that's maybe informed your new value proposition, or what you think a value proposition is even now?
Sure. Yeah, I probably rephrased that recently. I think it's basically coding has become a commodity, right? And maybe the same example I used before. Before you could open the door, before I mean like 30 years ago, 40 years
Right.
ago, you could open the door and say, I'm an expert in Excel. And you would be hired. That's your offer, right? If you go 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and you say, I'm an expert in Excel, well, yeah, all the office employees are experts in Excel. It's no longer a valuable proposition. Definitely not as a door opener. So if it's one of those commodities, if it's now a skill, it's one of your tools. Yeah, you don't hire somebody because they know how to use a hammer. That you hire somebody that knows how to use all these tools to build a house,
Yeah.
right? And so I think, unfortunately, because I love coding, coding became so much more entertaining to do now, because now you don't have to think about all the syntax and all the
Right.
complexities to writing code. So it's so much more fun as an engineer, but it's no longer the value proposition. So that's why in the last few months, we've shifted that towards delivering value. And we heard this from other AI companies and agencies. People don't want a hammer, right? People want a house.
Yeah.
Nobody wants an automation. Nobody wants an AI agent. What they want is to be able to see more patients. They want to be able to sell more. So I'm shifting. We're positioning ourselves. Or messaging has changed in a way that it's okay. We're not going to make your app. We're going to give you an opportunity for a business, for a startup. So there's a distinction, right? Before we're just the app, and now it is that dream, that goal of the transformation for your clinic, for your startup, for your office. And it takes a lot of effort, I think, to be able to make that, or it took me a lot of effort to make that transformation inside. For 25 years, I've seen myself as an engineer, as a software developer. And then suddenly, basically everybody is a software developer. So I'm not going to say it has been easy. It's an identity shift. And I think Tony Robbins talked about this a few months ago on a podcast. He said, like, for the last 100, 200 years, these transformations have happened very slowly.
Mm-hmm.
The Industrial Revolution. So it took a couple generations for that transformation to take place. Then the internet and mobile. Every time those transformations have been shorter and shorter, and AI is making this transformation so much faster that it's not even 5 years, and we're seeing how the identity of people is changing. And so, that, to answer your question in a very long way, it has to change. And I think we go to the build me a house. I don't care if you know how to use a tool. That's great. Tool, just software development became a tool, and it's a very powerful tool. But I feel that I don't want to buy that service anymore. I want to buy the house. I want to buy the end service.
Yeah, I love that analogy. I think that's really great. Is that people want the house, so they're going to hire a person who knows how to build the house. They're not going to think to themselves, okay, let me hire one guy who knows how to use a hammer, one guy who knows how to use a saw, one guy who knows how to, you know what I mean, one guy who has lumber. So
Yeah.
that makes total sense to me. I think that as a recruiter now for going on 14 years, I feel like there are a lot of that recruiters themselves, but also a lot of the job market has been that, especially in my lifetime of being in the workforce. I've been in the workforce for 27 years, just to date myself or whatever, going on 30 years. And it feels like there are a lot of jobs or paths, or even when you talk to a lot of candidates, which I did before in a kind of a languages driven generalist firm, before you speak to a lot of different people at different kinds of companies. I feel like a lot of people, certainly in Canada, but in the US, I think as well, let me get this skill, whatever it is, whether it's something I learned on the job through experience, or I went to school for it, or I got a certification, and then hire me based on that skill. The rest of me, you don't need to talk to. There's a big separation here. You don't need to know me. You don't need to talk to me about anything else of my other qualities, and I don't need to bring those to the table. And I like that distance. Just give me my paycheck and leave me alone, kind of thing, which is a bit sad because a lot of those people they're not necessarily looking to feel fulfilled at work. It's just like, let me just put in my time and that's it. And that's fine. They're allowed to do that if they want. But I feel like this, I don't want to hire a guy who uses a hammer. I want to hire a guy who builds the house. That's the workforce of tomorrow. I feel like it's all going that way. Do you see that as well? That like people will, because the human qualities will become necessary in the assessment of who's a good employee, that just having a skill and being hired for a guy who's got a skill or a gal who's got a skill isn't really going to be enough anymore to secure yourself employment in the future? Is that how you feel as well, that you'll have to bring more of yourself to the table to be able to even just have a job at all?
That I never thought about it in the way you just put it, but it makes sense. First of all, I'm not. I typically have worked in small companies, 250 or less. So there's always been a little bit more of a sense of belonging, and it was never like very few peers that were like that. Like, where just give me my paycheck and that's it. You're just getting my hours and that. So I feel that especially in small companies, small to medium sized companies, that sense of belonging is extremely important. And it goes beyond that skill, right? So we back in the day, 5 years ago, we used to work in offices, right?
Yeah.
And we spend more time with them than with our family members. So that was very important to just go beyond your skills. And I think that maybe moving forward, it's still extremely relevant. I see all these memes and reels where people are in 10 different rooms and talking on video camera, and their intricacies about how they relate to each other. They mute themselves. I hate this guy, and they were muted. So those personal relationships are so hard to do virtually,
Yes.
remotely. They're very, very hard to do. And so definitely, it's kind of like it's a little bit ambiguous, because we're talking about, here are my skills, but you don't see me every day. You only see my skills. You only see my work for a few minutes that we talk on Slack or that we meet on a Zoom meeting, but you don't get to see the rest of me. And I think that there needs to be a shift. There needs to be some sort of merger of these two worlds. The people are going to the office and the people are fully remote. There needs to be a way that you connect more at a personal level, and it definitely goes beyond your skills. And again, the companies that I work with, people were very committed to the company, most of them, and that was very beautiful to see. And it was nice because, like, you could be there sweating it, stressed, but you were kind of like a little bit of a family. Of course, you don't like one or two, and maybe one or two don't like you, but that was part of it, right? And I feel that that's lost, and it has to come back, because AI is just making that line thicker and thicker, and it's just going to be more problematic if not. Otherwise, what happened a couple of years ago, the what's it called, the silent resignation,
Quiet quitting,
that happened, and how many millions of dollars of productivity and businesses lost because of that, and they didn't see it, right? There was HR and managers and all these layers that they put on top, and nobody saw it coming, and probably still happening. It's just we don't know about.
It's a very good point. I think that there's a lot of things that got broken during COVID and post-COVID in particular, and like quiet quitting, I've often heard blamed on, it's like, oh, it's because people are working remote and they're inherently lazy. They're just bad people who are inherently lazy and they don't care about anything. And pardon me, and that's why they're doing this to us now. They're out to get us, the employers. I don't think that's true. I think that maybe there's a couple of scammers out there who are like, amazing, I can get a remote job and never work and scam the company. I really don't think that's most people. I think most people quiet quit because they've been juggled around a lot. And I think that during COVID, there was a lot of oh my God, we'll pull you out of this job. You have benefits, you have a family, whatever else. Don't worry about it. We'll give you this job. We'll pay you more money. We'll be, oh, you know what? It's 6 months in. Actually, we're canceling this whole division now. Sorry, you're laid off. Oh, you know what? We're going to give you this amazing job now too. We'll pull you out again. Actually, you know what? We canceled the whole thing. We're laying everybody off. We're just going to outsource everything. There was the juggling around with people's lives during COVID was astronomical too.
Yeah.
And I think that plus again, like things going so fast and being evaluated artificially, there's a big cynicism in the general workforce, not necessarily in recruitment, but especially when I talk to people who've had some of those negative experiences. I think that you're right, that human connection between like employer, the job you have, your coworkers, where there's a sense of belonging, it makes it a lot easier to put up with disappointments or stresses or whatever else, because you actually care. There's an emotional connection there, and then you're like, all right, well, I'm doing this because I actually care and want to do it, and not just for the paycheck and because I have to.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, like I love remote working.
Yes.
So and I feel that it works for most positions, works well. There's just that gap. How do you close it? It doesn't necessarily mean make a rule, go 3 days a week to the office, but there needs to be something that makes it work better. People come up with this avatar type of worlds where you walk to people to Slack with them. I don't know if that's the right solution. I personally don't like it, but overall there needs to be a balance, and I feel that there is definitely, a couple times a month we get together and we do this type of meetings, and I get with all my team and we code for a few hours together on a problem. So that kind of like closes the gap. Every few months we meet in person, and so we've been working for many years together, so we know each other. But if you're hiring a new person, if you're hiring a new salesperson in South America or in the other side of the ocean, and you don't build that rapport and you don't get to know them and they get involved with the company, then they're just they're offshore or remote talent that you hire them to complete a task.
Yeah.
And that's the complete opposite of what we want, right? Again, task is just, okay, put the nails in the wall. I don't want somebody. AI is going to be able to do that. Yeah. I want somebody to have the taste, where the nail goes, why this wall goes here. Tell me why it shouldn't go there. The AI is going to tell me after I spend a couple $1,000s in the wrong direction. But we need that human factor in building it. So that's very important.
Yeah, I love that you went there. This is something that I've been saying for a little while. I really feel that now, from like the employer perspective, even, I think that the thinking is going more along the lines of, people will use different vernacular in every industry, of course, but at the core, I think it's, what do we need to achieve to get to what we need to achieve? Which of these things are tasks, and which of these things are jobs that is a project a human being needs to do? Tasks can be automated. And I feel like increasingly that's going to be the question. So it's like a lot of people look at it from the employee perspective. Oh, this is my job. It's my livelihood. It's no fair. It's going away. I'm scared of whatever else. And I don't think that's the right way to think, because regardless, progress is happening either way. We can't just sit around and be like, oh, the past is gone and now I'm sad. Yes, you can be sad about it. However, the productive choice is to be like, to know what it's going to be like in the future. And people ask me this too. What should I say on a job application now? What should I put in my cover? Do I need to do a cover letter? How does anybody get a job anymore? People asking me this often, unless they're doing it through me actively. And honestly, I think that it's like, if what you're doing is you're used to doing a series of tasks, your job will disappear. It will disappear. It'll be automated by AI, robotics, etc. If what you're doing is a job that requires you to connect the dots, have empathy, creativity, resilience, and so on, negotiation skills, is kind of like a human skills, helping people through an emotional, decision or whatever else, in some way. Or taste is a great one. I did not have that down in my list of things that AI cannot do. It's a cluster of human things that it bends and flexes. It's not a hard thing, right? But I think that do you feel the same way, that it almost comes down to task versus job or project, whatever word you want to use?
Yes. Yeah. I believe so. And, you're talking about this, and I'm thinking about like even surgeons. Doctors are some of them are doing tasks,
Yes.
and those tasks are gonna go away. The nurse taking all your vitals, that is a task. It
Yeah.
doesn't. With all due respect to all nurses and practitioners, taking those things are not, taking all your vitals. It doesn't require a lot of expertise. A robot is going to be able to replace you within the next 18 months. I mean, you already go to Publix and you put your to the supermarket here, and they take most of your vitals very accurately, very very fast.
Yep.
The question is, a lot of people, like even bed manners. Like, okay, if you're next to the patient, and I don't want the android taking my vitals. I want somebody that's going to ask me how I'm feeling. We see it today. Canada healthcare system, I know it's a little bit different, but here you sometimes feel like a machine. You go through one door and you go through the other. Those are all tasks, right? And they're gonna go away. They're gonna, it's slowly, but in the next 18, 24 months, it's going away. But where do you draw the line? There's a point where certain tasks require, even if they're tasks, they will require some sort of empathy,
Yes.
and human connection. Some other tasks are too critical to automate. Even the best AIs right now, if you're doing SDR, trying to make a message, a call outreach that connects, it doesn't work that well. I've tried it. I've sent thousands of emails in the last few months, and the ones written by AI don't connect. So even that simple task of getting all the information, which right now we do it very quickly, in a few seconds, we have all the picture of the prospect. And so I can be like, oh, he likes scuba diving, I like scuba diving. Hey, John, where did you go scuba diving last? The AI cannot do that connection. Even if you feed it all your life and all your thoughts and hobbies and everything, it's never going to do that. Maybe in a couple of years. But today, that task requires a human. So I think there's still some leeway for certain tasks that are going to be critical. And again, it's just going to require some management taste. What do we automate? Where do we put the stop? Where do we need to be able to raise a flag and say, this is less than 90% certain that this is the right answer. I need a human to take over. So all these things come into play and are interesting problems to tackle in the next few months.
100%.
We're not talking years anymore. We're talking months.
We are talking months. And I think that you're very right. It then begs the question at the top, what is a nursing job? Why do we have nurses? Is it just to take vitals? Is there more to it than that? Is a patient's recovery simply data and then we give them medications or treatment? Or is there something about the human experience that they require humans to connect the dots and take them through to recovery? Is that actually part of their recovery? These are very big questions, right? That you get asked. Or like, can machines take vitals and do triage? Or can they, who has to make the decision? Do they have the instincts to say, I feel like something else is wrong with this patient looking at them? They're not telling me the symptoms. We haven't, you know what I mean? But something else is going on. We need to investigate. There's a lot there, right? And it begs the question, like, what is truly the job description? The job descriptions that we have right now are very reductive. They only focus on what tasks you do for the most part and responsibilities, right? But I think that there's actually behind the scenes a lot more to it than that we don't actually talk about in recruitment or think about in employment. But we will have to start thinking about that and having those decisions. Otherwise, everything really, if you don't care at all, everything can be rendered more efficient in a world where humans don't interact at all. But like, why would we even want that? Like, we are the job market. We also have to work jobs ourselves. You know what I mean?
Well, you just said something. It's funny. You seen that picture where everybody's looking at the sunset in New York and everybody's holding their phone.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I think that maybe there's maybe some sort of generational differences where a lot of people want the human connection, and it is a scary future for my kids where they live in the device. They go to an event to broadcast it or maybe save it on their phone. And yes, I mean, we all do that. We're all, I'm guilty of that as well. But the thing is, maybe some of them prefer that. They just want to go to a clinic where two robots are gonna, triage them, give them the medication, and off they go. And maybe most of the other people are going to prefer that human touch. And so it's going to be an interesting development on how that turns out.
Absolutely. But one of the things you said earlier, I think is very important from a job market perspective, right? Which is to think about it from what does the employer want? What are they trying to do? Like you gave the analogy of they want to build a house, right? So it's like if your only thing that you're bringing to the table is you know how to use a hammer, and you're thinking they need someone who knows how to build a house. If you want to be employable forever, you need to make sure you're the person who knows how to do a whole bunch of stuff in that house that is a combination of things that isn't just the one skill. And I think that that's just as true for coders who are doing like blue collar coding. Yeah, I was just going to get a job, entry level job somewhere. I went to Code Academy, I went to Hacker U or whatever, and now I'm
Yeah.
going to get an entry level job somewhere, work my way up, whatever. Sorry, you're not. You're not going to get an entry level job. You and thousands of other people who paid money to go to Hacker U and whatever else and Code Academy are not going to get that entry level job anymore because the employer knows that AI is better at just using the hammer. Um, so it's like everybody's got to start thinking outside the box a little bit about what value they bring. And I would
Yeah.
argue recruiters too. You tell me if I'm nuts, but an employer is going to think, how do I get candidates? I could hire an agency, I could hire a TA person, or I could use this AI tool or whatever else. If they're only thinking, how do I get candidates? If all you are is a delivery mechanism for candidates, you're going to be out of a job.
Correct. Because I think one thing that you said earlier when I went to comment, if you think that just getting that title, either going to university or going online and getting the skill, there are, you've seen those videos in Shanghai and Asia where there's thousands of people in a conference room learning how to use Clawbot and all the other agents. So your skills, if it took you more than a couple of days to get those skills, somebody already wrote 3 projects while you were completing that. They already have products in production, selling. And there's this experiment where a college professor divided the class into 2 groups. One group were supposed to do a vase, the best vase that they could, and the other group were supposed to do as many vases as they could. And then at the end of the semester, they measure who had the best vases, the pottery vases. The one who had to work on one and make it the best one that they could was not the best one. It was the repetition, the exposure. They kept refining the process, and ultimately they came out to the best base that they could do. And I think that's the same thing with all these skills. Now you have the skill. You can use a hammer, put it into production, put it into place, and show that you can build something, that you can accomplish a result. If you're in sales, great, you have all these tools. You need to put them together to give me a qualified lead. You know how to use Apollo, great, but I need you to get me a lead. And so you can use the tools. And I think that's important. The other thing that's critical is that what you mentioned about being either generalist or getting those results and applying your expertise. And that is at the core as to why kind of like we reframe Vantage proposition. It's not just about developing software in healthcare. It's not just about this or that. It's hyper specialization in developing transformation through technology, especially for healthcare, because that's where the place that I know the best. Because there's going to be another 1,000 agencies, another 1,000 automation agencies doing the same thing. But how many of them have had 10 years of experience with healthcare or developing EMRs from the ground up? So those things need to come and play together. It's no longer your skill, but it's all your tool sets and your experiences and let's say your taste that come together to serve that customer or serve that founder or that company.
That's a really, really excellent point. I love the analogy about the vases. I already knew the answer myself because I believe in this very passionately. And I think that, an example I use with people often, because I was in the music business for a while. I learned to play multiple instruments, somewhat on my own with some guidance. But some of the
Right.
best guidance I got from a virtuoso teacher I had the luxury of working with for about 10, 12 months when I was young was also that it's like, I was lazy. Everybody's lazy, right? But I was lazy. He was asking me to do a lot of repetitive exercises, and I got pretty good on my own without doing them, right? So I was like, well, I'm already able to make songs, right? But the thing is that doing the repetitive exercises isn't just so that you can just for the sake of it. You become better by doing those, where you become a better player, so that when you go to write the song afterwards, you're not the same person, you're not the same player you were before you did those repetitive exercises. So that the value is you become better, your instincts become better. And then when you do that task again after multiple repetitions, you're not the same person anymore. That's
Yeah.
the key difference. It's not the vase that's changed, it's the people changed in doing it, and they became better vase makers. It seems logical when you look at it that way, and yet a lot of the way that we're automating things now is the opposite. It's stuff that you risk losing your skills because you're no longer doing those things. Like, let's say in sales, if you're taking yourself away from speaking to a lot of people, even overcoming a lot of rejections or whatever, you become different by speaking to a lot of people. Then you go into one meeting and you're a different guy now who really knows how to talk to people, because you speak to all kinds of people all the time. If you
Yeah.
barely speak to anybody and then you go into a meeting, how incredible are you going to be in that meeting? Not very, because all you did was email people or email them, for months.
Yeah. And now that you mentioned that, I tell people when they ask me how coding changed, that's actually one of the biggest things that I miss, and I'm actually encouraging my team not to do, which is, as a AI coder nowadays, we don't look at the code that much. We just
Right.
maybe glance over it, but we lose that sense of ownership on basically the AI generates 10 different features. I'm not really sure how they all work unless I spend a tremendous amount of time planning it, understanding what is it that the AI is doing, testing it properly. And so a lot of people, when you hear ASLOP, or you hear all these vibe coded projects, that's what happened. You can, with one line, you can generate a Salesforce competitor.
Right.
But how well do you know the product? How well does it work? And so when you don't have that effort, maybe that muscle memory of, okay, this is why this is here, this is why this database is over there, and you don't, first of all, you didn't come from that background, I feel that you just don't understand how the code was generated. And on the other side, you just can't have that insight into how to even make it better. Because you got 100 features developed overnight, and okay, maybe you test most of them. You don't really understand them until you play with them for hours, for days. Back in the day, we would, back in the day, we used to code them by hand, one at a time. We would spend days on each of those features, and we get to know them very well. It had its opposite problems. We just get used to how they work. But so I think that's very important, and that's something that's happening today. And I encourage anyone who's doing any sort of work with AI to get into the weeds, understand what's happening under the hood, so that thought for 5 minutes. What do you do? let me see what type of questions you ask yourself or you ask another agent, so that I know how to prompt you better. Maybe give you some safeguards, safeguards, so that you don't do that mistake in the future. And so, I encourage everyone to do that, to get better at using AI for whatever it is that you use it.
That's an excellent point. I love that point, Sam. Honestly, in a way, taste is not just knowing what to do magically, right? It's knowing all the thousands of things you should not do. It's knowing all of them and knowing why they're the wrong decision. You know what I mean? And that's if you to arrive at taste is difficult, because you need to at least be aware of a lot of the wrong things or a lot of the failures in order to know what the correct thing is quickly. And if you haven't gone through those failures and trial and error to understand, oh, I tried this, but it didn't work because of this, and I had to figure my way out of it or whatever, how are you supposed to develop that taste in the first place, right?
Yeah. And LLMs are an attention seeking radar. Every word that you put gives the LLM some sort of attention hook. That's why when you're writing some instruction, you say important, right? Just like a human, you say this is important. So if you don't know how it works under the hood, you might not know that it's going to go off the rails. And so you can prevent that. You can be like, hey, make sure not to touch this database. Make sure not to do this with the leads, or whatever it is that you're doing. Sometimes even those negatives to guide the attention of the LLM in the place that you want it, and it has its opposite effect. Sometimes you narrate too much, and it's basically an echo chamber. So, but knowing these things, how they work, many people don't know this. Okay, why is it that I'm not supposed to be polite with an LLM, right? I'm not. Don't start cursing at them, but why is it that you don't say please, or maybe there's those complexities of using AI nowadays that unless you get into it, you won't get as good as other people. And everybody's running, and they're miles ahead from us. And we just need you have to keep evolving and figuring these things out.
Yeah, that's great advice. Thank you very much, Sam. Somehow we've already arrived at our time. I really appreciate it. I think this was a great conversation. Where can people reach out to you? Where's the best way for them to reach out to you if they want to engage you and your firm?
Sure. Yeah. So you can go to vantageio.com. As I said, basically, we offer anything from fractional CTO and consulting advice for any sort of AI transformation that you require in your startup, in your small clinic, in your practice, all the way through to full custom software development, integrations with different EMRs and so on. So vantageio.com, we can have a conversation, no pitch, 30 minutes. We can figure out what is it how can we take you to the next level? And then you decide, and we help you all the way through with my team and my expertise as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Sam. Really appreciate it. Thanks everybody for listening. Now, if you're listening to this on Spotify, hit us up on LinkedIn as well, and we'll be able to direct you in the right way. Thanks a lot, and see you all next week.
Awesome. Thank you.